Some of us have gone on detours in life. Some of us have been delayed because we have taken our lives in our own hands and we trusted ourselves to know how to get us through this life. It's a very dangerous approach. Welcome to episode 1 of Designed and Delivered for Destiny. I'm your host, Nicole Cherie. I'm a wife, author, life coach, business owner, and speaker. I've been a mental health therapist for over 10 years, and now I want to bring the conversations from my office and bring it to you wherever you are. Each episode, we will discuss various topics related to your design, your deliverance, or your destiny. Now, I'm going to assume that you are someone who wants God's best for your life, and perhaps you recognize that there are areas that you still want to grow in. You're probably not wanting to run someone else's race, but the one that God has laid out for you. I'm glad that you're taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with me for this episode. So today, I would like to talk to you about topics that's on a lot of people's mind, and one in particular that I've spent many years trying to understand. It's not a topic that can be fully addressed in one episode, but we're going to start today from the beginning. So let's jump in right now. Today, we are going to talk about your calling. I wonder how much time you have spent wondering if you're doing what you're created to do. You likely have this inner knowing that there is a calling for your life, but are you doing what you're called to do or what you're good at? And are they the same thing? So let's just kind of go ahead and eliminate the elephant in the room and address the fact that you actually have a specific calling on your life. But God spent time not just giving you a calling, but giving you the foundation of what you would need to fulfill what He has sent you here to do. And here's the truth. You will never be fully satisfied in your soul until you're aligned with what He has called you to do. Don't believe me? Okay, so imagine for a second, imagine going one whole year doing everything you want to do just because you want to do it. At the end of that year, tell me how satisfied, fulfilled, how much joy do you think you will have? Now, some of you may believe you will be satisfied, you will be just so full of happiness, right? But maybe that's because you have hardened your heart to God over the years. So it's a little bit easier for you to ignore His voice and that inner prompting of what He's actually leading you to do. Well, okay, so let's say you're one of those individuals. Here's what I'll add. Go that entire year without using any negative coping strategies, right? So no drinking, no drugs, no overeating, no binge watching TV, no scrolling through social media for hours. You won't be able to do any of that. And then tell me how your soul really feels at the end of that year. You see, when we can't cover up and suppress our feelings, then we have no choice but to confront them. And that's where we have to begin to ask, okay, so what's really causing me to feel that way? Why do I feel disconnected from life? Why do I feel lonely? Why do I feel discontent? Now, obviously, there are a plethora of issues in life that influence our thoughts and emotions. But your spirit was created to do what God designed you to do. And when its needs are not being met, you will have different issues emotionally and psychologically. Now, on the flip side, when we are aligned with what God is calling us to do, God takes us through the process of knowing how to navigate the challenges that you will inevitably face in life in a way that it's going to give you endurance, contentment, peace, and joy. You may still struggle at times, but you're able to handle it differently. He equips you with the tools to overcome anxiety from the fear of the unknown or depression from, trauma in your past. He gives you wisdom to know who can help you overcome and how to think in ways that pull you out of dark places versus keeping you stuck. He gets you to the point where you no longer need those unhealthy coping mechanisms. There is a difference between living a life that is rooted in your will versus his. I wonder how many of you are miserable at work because you've rushed to take the position and ignored God's voice telling you to wait. Or are you in a toxic marriage because you wanted to meet your own needs through a person versus submitting your needs to God and allowing Him to meet and supply all your needs His way? So there is a difference when we are surrendered to what God is leading us to do. And I will be the first to tell you that that journey to surrendering, to yielding your desires to God is not easy. It's way harder than doing things the worldly way. But generally, it gets easier in time. The part that baffled me for many years is why God would give us such freedom to make our own choices. It seemed to me like He's all knowing and He knew why He sent us, each of us here. So why not make it to where we would not have a choice, any other choice but to follow His will? Especially since, being in His will comes with a level of joy and peace and happiness that the world can never give us. I then heard, I believe it was Ravi Zacharias explain, and I'm paraphrasing, how God had to give us a choice for our love towards Him to be legitimate. So He didn't want us to be forced to love Him. And I guess we feel that same way about people in our lives, right? It's definitely different when someone genuinely loves you and chooses you despite so many reasons why not to. I think of, how my husband and I in the early parts of our marriage, it was very challenging. We had many obstacles to overcome. But despite that, we chose to keep loving each other and remain committed to our marriage. And thankfully, God has brought us to a place of joy and happiness and oneness that makes everything we went through worth it. But my point is that it matters when you're chosen. So God has given us freedom. He's given you the freedom to make choices, to choose what you will do with your life. So have your choices been based on His will for you, or you're just trying to survive? Are you going down a path that made the most sense when you asked yourself, and maybe you asked a few people around you, what would be the best thing to do based on reason? Or are you on a path where you've acknowledged Him in all your ways so that He can order your steps and direct your path? I remember being a teen and just having a plan to get to a place of success. I was going to be wealthy like Oprah, and I went to school for business my first year in college. And I just wanted to be in a position to be wealthy, and I just had this plan. I was going to be this extremely successful businesswoman. The problem is that I never submitted my plans to God to see if it aligned with His will. Why? Well, I didn't know that I needed to at that time. I thought, as many people do, that you carve out your own path in life, and your ability to have success is based on your ability to make choices and be committed to your goal. But something happened, and I read Rick Warren's book, Purpose Driven Life. Now, that book completely shook up something in my soul. I'd heard about purpose as an adolescent. It was one of my mom's main messages to me. But the seed that she planted, it began to be watered when I read this book. Of course, I didn't know something in me shifted, but my subconscious began to work against my conscience. What does that mean? Well, your subconscious is very, very powerful. Scientists say it makes up approximately 95% of your mind. So we are only consciously influencing our day-to-day behaviors and choices 5% of the time. What's in the subconscious mind? Well, memories from the past, life experiences, wisdom, bad advice, life-giving words, the words that rob you from life, and all of these different things. It's all combined, right? It's like a war zone where the stronger voices have the most influence. So when a word is spoken over you, it goes into you as a seed, and many things can happen to that seed, which I won't discuss today. But if something or someone comes along and waters that seed, it's going to start to dominate, right? And that goes for good and bad things. Well, so this purpose seed was watered when I read that book. And suddenly things started to shift. My behaviors and everything started changing. And eventually I ended up dropping out of school after my freshman year for reasons that really didn't make any sense. At that time, I was still driven by worldly things. I really didn't have a plan or a direction. So it took me a while to get on the right path. But eventually, after a series of many events, I returned back to school, and there was this subtle voice inside me that made me think I was supposed to help people. And here I am now, right? So that transition happened because of a seed that was planted and then watered. But I'll fill in the rest of that story later. My point in telling you this is what would have been different if I knew to submit my thoughts and plans to God before applying to college? What would have been different if I understood that I was fearfully and wonderfully made for a specific calling, that my design was not a coincidence? Perhaps you didn't know. Perhaps you did know, but you're just struggling to have clarity on how to move forward. This journey to pursuing your calling and doing what God has called you to do, it's a journey. It started with Him, but you have to do your part. Just like He doesn't just create you and leave you to manage life on your own. You can't make the decision to live life according to God's will, but then make all the decisions based on your own will. Okay, so that choice to surrender, it never stops. God has to be part of your process every day. Some of us have gone on detours in life. Some of us have been delayed because we have taken our lives in our own hands and we trusted ourselves to know how to get us through this life. It's a very dangerous approach. You see, God is not just interested in you fulfilling your calling here on earth, but He is interested in you being whole throughout the process. Here is the hard truth. You don't know how to make yourself whole. You may have success in certain areas of your life, but successful people are taking their own lives for a reason. They aren't whole. This is what makes the process of submitting feel hard because you can have so many areas of your life being challenged by God. God is growing you in many areas at the same time, or you're just dealing with the challenges of life all at the same time. It could be, your marriage and finances and children and mental health. But your yes, I surrender to God is a yes to being made whole. And the only way for that to take place is allowing Him to work in and through every area of your life. Let Him heal the broken places. Let Him take you through hard seasons as your shepherd. Let Him show you He can comfort you while you're grieving or be a friend when everyone leaves. Listen, I'm here to help you reach your destiny, but I'm also here to point you to Jesus and to help you overcome whatever is keeping you from being whole as you move towards what God has called you to do. I care about every aspect of who you are. Successful but broken Christians are about to become a thing of the past. Now, I can only imagine how bright you will shine when you are fulfilling your calling. Some people get confused about calling and purpose and or assignment. So we're going to be talking a lot about the differences over each episode. But I want to start with letting you know that your calling is not one assignment. It is ongoing. I was listening to a TV director speak this past weekend at a women's conference, and she said that her calling is to inspire people through film. And I just felt so much joy that she knew that every time she had a new assignment to create a film, that she is living in her calling. What are the assignments that you are doing right now or planning for? And how do they connect to your overall calling? You may be called to empower women to become the best version of themselves. So in one season, your assignment is to be a teacher, perhaps at a university. And then another season, God may lead you to write a book that's going to empower them. And then it may change and He may say, start a podcast, start a YouTube channel, right? Your Assignments change based on the season, but the calling remains the same. Here in Texas and maybe in other parts of the country, there is a mass exodus of teachers leaving schools, many for reasons that are understandable. But for some of those teachers, they are missing out on their assignment for this season. There were students that God desired to connect to that teacher for a specific reason, and that teacher's absence prevents that from happening. Your calling is connected to other people's lives. We can't choose our assignments based on circumstances. There is something that God wants to do in and through us in the midst of those circumstances. And if you're not there, if you don't show up, someone else has to fill in, and you miss the blessing that was attached to that assignment in that season. Now, I'm using teachers as an example, but this can apply to any profession or assignment that you've been given. Now, it is possible that in this season, God is wanting to move you to something else. He does that all the time. He may be saying it's time to leave your profession, career, your community, and ironically, everything could be going well. In those cases, obedience is your protection. The key, though, is to be sure you're hearing clearly from God. Pray, fast, seek wisdom, and submit your will to His. Whatever you do, be sure to do it by faith, and God will have your back. Listen, there are many parts to living a life that aligns with God's will. Don't begin to worry if you're not sure if you're in His will. Just take a step by faith, and that is a choice you will never regret. So, Nicole Cherie, what is my next step? Well, for some, it's going to be to make the decision to live your life according to what God is leading you to do, and to recognize that you've been doing things your own way for long enough, and you're not whole, you're not getting the results that you desire, and God has so much more for you. So your next step is to make that decision to shift. For some, it's a decision to take time to uncover who God created you to be, so that you have a better idea of what He called you to do. So going through that process of understanding your design, understanding your personality, understanding the gifts and the talents or the unique attributes He's given you. And then for others, you may know your calling and understand your unique design. So it really may be just for you to decide to acknowledge God in every decision that you make, and do your best to yield and surrender to Him on a day-to-day basis. I always recommend this to everyone. It's always great when you can have a mentor who is farther along than you in this area that can just help you move forward, or a life coach that can help you to get past your stuck points and accomplish the goals that you have for your life. Or you may benefit from a therapist to help you process the wounds you carry. I wrote a book for her to know and embrace her God-given design, and it's a tool that you can use to start the process of uncovering your unique design, and also uncovering the subconscious thoughts that have been holding you back. Wherever you are in the process, it's okay. It's not about age. It's not about, having to know it all right now, or I'm behind and things like that. It's about making the choice to surrender right now, always. There are no surrender breaks. Okay, so we will be talking about this topic much more on my podcast in the coming weeks. I'll leave you with one final thought for today. You are not the architect of your life, so you will never know all the details up front. In fact, the desire to know all the details is the subconscious need for control. We all have it. But remind yourself, if God is wise enough to create you and all of humanity in such great detail that we can see around us, let alone what we can't see, then we can trust that He's wise enough to manage the details of our life. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. We will now transition to the phrase of the week that I believe it's time to eradicate, destroy, ban in the culture. It's shame rating time. The phrase for the week is, you should be ashamed of yourself. You may have said this or heard someone else use it, and generally it's said in a joking manner. Sometimes, there are situations where someone's actually being condemned. But I want to propose that we get rid of it altogether. Shame is never okay to carry or to project onto someone, even those who are at fault of something. Do we realize that shame is literally telling a person something is wrong with them at their core? You are speaking shame into that person's subconscious. It's actually an attack on identity. We know that guilt is it's focused on that person's behavior, which they can choose to change and improve, right? So there's a level of healthy guilt that can be a good thing. But shame is telling that person that they are flawed, and that does not lead to change. Remember, it's the goodness of God that leads people to repentance, not shaming them. So the next time you hear someone use this phrase, lovingly reply, I will not, I shall not, no ma'am, no sir, that is not my portion. So feel free to share any unhealthy sayings or patterns or cycles that you would like to see broken within your family, within yourself, or within the community, okay? So let me close with just a word of encouragement. And I know that everything that you've gone through, all the choices that you've made, the pain, the overcoming, the victories, I want you to know that all of it is going to work together for your good. You will fulfill destiny. It's not a coincidence that you are listening to this podcast today. God is going to finish what He started in your life. So walk confidently knowing that the Creator Himself is working in you, both to will and to do of His good pleasure. Don't forget to leave your thoughts, your questions, subscribe, and please share this with a friend. May the Lord God bless and keep you until next time.